Hey guys, it's John Colson here, and in today's video I want to take you through the basics of the hip hinge movement pattern. So the hip hinge itself isn't an exercise, it's a movement pattern that forms part of exercises. So if you've ever seen things like Romanian deadlifts, hip thrusts, cable pull-throughs, any kind of exercise that focuses on leading with the hips for the movement, that's the hip hinge movement pattern. And it's one of these things that it's quite complicated to get right, because there's quite a few moving parts and requires some coordination. So I want to take you through a very basic step-by-step to help you build up your own hip hinge to make sure you're doing it safely. For the first step, what I want you to do is actually make sure you're leading with the hips. So for the hip hinge movement, when I see people doing this for Romanian deadlifts or anything, a common mistake is they'll actually start by just leaning forward straight from the waist, kind of leading with the shoulders. So it'll look something like this. You'll see them, and they'll just lean straight forward. And the problem is that puts quite a lot of strain across the lower back muscles. So the way to do this, stand against the wall, take kind of about a half step forward, nice and tall through the body. And all I want you to do, just think about reaching your hips back towards the wall behind, and then coming up nice and tall. So focus on reaching the hips back, reach back, squeeze the butt, stand up nice and tall. So you'll feel the difference instantly between starting the movement from reaching from the hips and starting the movement from just leaning from the waist. For the second step, I want you to then focus on the position for your knees and your shins. So when you're doing a hip hinge, you want to think about keeping the shins vertical, like straight up. So for this, go soft knees, so bounce on the knees a little bit, feel them go a little bit soft. Keep the shins vertical and then reach the hips back and squeeze up. So this is opposed to doing just keeping the legs straight and reaching back. So you'll see the difference in my shin angle. So you don't want the shins coming back. You want to keep the shins nice and straight, reaching the hips back. For the third step, there's two ways you can do this. And we're going to focus on keeping the upper body nice and straight for the movement. So we've done the hips, we've then done the shins, so now it's time for the upper body. The first way is you can take a bar and you're going to bring it behind your back. And you want the bar to touch on your lower back around the tailbone, upper back and back of your head. And then just going to hold it with both hands. So from here, slight bend in the knees, focus on reaching the hips back. As you reach back, you want to keep your tailbone, your upper back and the back of your head all in contact with the bar. So that's a good way for doing it. Now I'm not going to lie, when you're in the gym and it's busy, if you're there holding a bar doing this movement, you may feel like a bit of a tube. So what I get people to do instead is actually just use the hands. So if you take your hands, spread the fingers out wide, you're going to put one hand on your lower back and the other hand across your stomach. So now when you practice this movement, you'll feel if there's any kind of pressure change on your hands. So for example, if you go to do it and you slump forward, you'll feel that crumple up on your hands. Likewise, if you try and overarch through the back, you'll feel that pull away from your hands. So keep the pressure on the hands, slight bend in the knees, and just reach the hips back. As you're reaching the hips back, don't feel any change on your hands. Squeeze the butt, come up nice and tall. Again, reach the hips back, don't feel any pressure change on your hands. Squeeze the butt, come up nice and tall. For the final step, we want to focus on getting the tension across the muscles in the upper back and the rear shoulders. And that's important because when it comes to doing exercises like the Romanian deadlifts, when you're lifting the weight, you don't want to kind of be slumped forward. You want to keep that nice kind of muscular tension, keep everything in place. The easy way that I teach people for the tension is you can take a weight plate, like 5-10 kilos. You're going to hold it across the chest. Now from here, think about pulling your shoulders, your shoulder blades and your elbows back and then squeeze down. So you should feel the tension in your upper back. And then from there, we're just going to go through the stages that we've already covered. So soft knees, keep the back nice and straight and just reach the hips back, keeping all that tension. Come down as far as what feels comfortable. Squeeze the butt, come up nice and tall. So reach the hips back, keep the shins vertical, keep the back straight. Squeeze up, nice and tall. So there's a 4-stage progression on how to help perfect your own hip hinge movement. Now for a start, you may find muscles like the hamstrings, like the back of the legs, the calf muscles and the muscles in your butt feel quite tight and restricted. But it's one of these ones that over time, you keep practicing that movement and they will start to loosen up. So give it a go.